Hi, everybody. Welcome back from the holidays. This is the Meme Team podcast where we discuss the marketing strategies creating breakout cultural moments. This week, we've got Christina Garnett, the author of the recent book, Transforming Customer Brand Relationships. Welcome, Christina.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get started. I wanted to bring up the Yellow Card and Good Charlotte collaboration happening. That was announced yesterday, and I just thought it was one of those moments that's reaffirming that millennials are now the main cultural touch points. Where we have all these nostalgic bands, from the emo era coming back, and I saw that also Newfound Glory is coming out with an album soon. So it's really cool that they're coming back and that millennials get to see all these artists that they grew up with playing again.
No, I love that. I think you can also see this with TikTok too. You have 21 Pilots and Drag Path. I love how they dropped that album and then kind of the lore behind all of that. I would not say I'm like a diehard 21 Pilots fan, but I know enough about that kind of space that when it started going viral on TikTok, I kind of immediately was like, what's the story behind this and stuff? And I think that really plays into the analog conversation, like the year of analog for 2026, as well as you're talking about the millennial music is kind of coming back into the fold.
Yeah. I also saw that Wheatus quote tweeted the Spotify charts for their songs, saying someone please find out who the billionth listener is to the song, because we want to give them concert or free stuff for life. And I thought that was really cool for them, to try to be engaging with their fans in a completely different way. That's kind of does take us back to those analog days of going to a concert and having to wait in line for Ticketmaster, physical line, instead of the way that Ticketmaster does nowadays, jacking up those prices and, the glory days of going to concerts that were $15, I remember going to Warped Tour and it was $20. We talked about this before with the All American Rejects last year, doing the concert series at garages of millennials houses and then at parking lots. So I'm just really curious to see how these old school, I mean, are they old school, but our age bands kind of try coming back into the fold and engaging with their listeners.
No, I completely agree. I think that's also kind of a callback to as well with what we're seeing economically. I think we're gonna. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and she made a really good point. She's Gen X, and she talked about how she's also seeing kind of the bands of her time period that are coming back as well. She said this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. Her name is Nick Elon. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But she said that she thinks that 2026 is going to be the year of rock and roll. We're going to see a resurgence. And I think she's correct because rock and roll is rebellion. Rock and roll is a safety net for a lot of people who feel powerless.
I love that. I mean, and we've already seen Gen Z is glomming onto the early 2000s as the latest fashion.
Yeah, they love Y2K.
Exactly. So it makes sense that these bands are going to start getting new listeners and fans. Well, awesome.
So if you are still on Twitter, there is an AI tool called Grok that's been around for a while, and it basically acts as essentially an AI assistant that you can essentially call from the heavens by saying @Grok and then requesting it do things. A lot of people you'll see use Grok to say hey, is this true? To essentially act like a fact checker whenever they see something that's published online. What has been happening recently, they see pictures of children and women on Twitter, and they have @Grok remove these clothes or put them in a bikini or put them in a certain position or something like this. And because there is very limited regulation on AI and Elon's going to do what Elon's going to do, it took a lot of people mad about this for them to try to do something about it. And some, not all, but some of the accounts that asked Grok to do these things were disabled. If you looked at Grok's account and looked at the media, they kind of removed a lot of the media that Grok had done to kind of undo this, but it doesn't undo the non-consensual harassment that is clearly being done. And that's not even getting into the specifics of it when it was done for children, clearly underage. And so when we're looking at this and we're looking at AI proliferation and how it's being done, I think we are kind of in the same way we've been doing about this with social media over the past 10 years. We really need to keep going back to the conversation of regulation because I get businesses not wanting regulation because it slows things down. It prevents innovation, as they say. But I think that there definitely needs to be some guardrails and safety rails when it comes to what can AI be used for and what can it not be used for, because there's going to be bad actors. And so I think this is a very public display of how AI can be used incorrectly, how it can victimize people. And the UK has already come forward to specifically ask how Twitter and Elon are doing, like what steps they're doing to prevent this from happening in the future, because the UK does have safeguards, not necessarily against AI, but for consumers. And we as a society, not just as Americans, but we as a society need to figure out like if and when these guardrails should be put in place. And if so, what should they? But I think this is definitely a call to arms for that.
Yeah, like, there's so many things here, right? Where it's
Yes, no,
like
it's definitely multi-layered for sure.
you have, like, the comms PR side of, like, what is Twitter doing? What is Elon doing? Does it even seem as if they're trying to approach a fix to the problem? I remember a couple years ago, it's like they would, like, get rid of accounts that were acting against, the terms of service, and it's like,
Mhm.
wouldn't this be one of those things where it's like you
Yeah.
have, I mean, the really bad one, right? It's child pornography, right?
Yes.
That's essentially what it is, child
Yes.
pornography on the Twitter feed that AI is doing. And then on top of that, you have, what's essentially like rage porn against like
Mhm.
women.
Yep.
The pictures that I've seen are like women sharing like accomplishments or like happy moments,
Yes.
and then you have some like bot coming in and saying like remove
Yeah.
clothes, and it just kind of like dehumanizes the
And
woman.
that's the
And
point of it, but that's the
right,
point of it, yeah.
right. And I'm not seeing like Grok kind of like or Twitter kind of actively step in and try to like message against like what's happening. So it just
Yeah.
seems as if like, well, clearly they don't care. So like, and yes, they're taking some things of like trying to take it down, but it really doesn't feel as if they're doing enough for it. And that's where it's just like, well, people are left questioning who steps in, who can, create these rules, right? I mean, we've known about at least like rage porn happening and trying to create, laws and regulations about that. I'm pretty sure that's kind of gone nowhere because it's like,
Mhm.
how do you do it? But then it's like, what does it have to do with like marketing? Well, it's like we're
Mhm.
all part of the system, right? We're
Yeah.
all kind of like actively participating in this. And even if you are speaking out against it, um, you're probably going to get targeted, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well,
then,
I think also as marketers, whether we want to believe it or not, we are stewards of the marketing tools that we use.
mhm,
And we should actively be not only creating the content and sharing our knowledge, but we should be working to make the world better. And I know that's like silly Pollyanna idealist of me, but I think we're better than what we're doing. I think that we, as marketers, we know intimately how our work can be used for good and for bad. And we've seen it in a lot of cases. And so we understand, like, it's weird to me to see people who can't wait to go on LinkedIn or go on social and tell you how much they know about something, and then they stay away from the hard stuff.
mm,
We need them fighting to say, like, this is wrong and we should be better than this. We should be taking steps to improve this. I think we are stewards of our industry and we need to be standing up when we're seeing AI, technology, social media, when we're seeing it being used badly. I think that we
yeah.
should be the first people to say something about it. I truly do.
Mm. Yeah, just reading more about this. One of the things that Musk initially did was to respond doing the laugh cry emojis and sharing a Grok generated picture of himself in a bikini. And I think that just kind of is very emblematic of his not understanding the overall issue of this, where it's
Yeah.
like it's not the same thing for him to consent to do this and asking
Yeah.
Grok to do it for him as
Yeah.
opposed to having it done to you. Um,
Well, he sees empathy as a weakness, so I would be shocked if he showed empathy. So that reaction feels very on brand.
Mhm. Yeah, it's also kind of goes along the trend of rage baiting
Mhm.
and trying to be edgy as a way to market yourself and troll people. But one of the other examples I wanted to bring up here is another company that's facing similar challenges with
Mhm.
their response to an incident that happened, and that's Polymarket. They had a few users that had placed bets saying that Venezuela was going to be invaded by America. And Polymarket has refused to pay out to them, saying that the incident was not technically an invasion. And it's funny because their users have taken to Twitter to kind of, complain about it, saying like, well, if it wasn't an invasion, then like, what was it? They've responded with sarcasm, saying that, what was it, like teleportation that like got, Maduro and his wife out, because otherwise, what would you call it? But I think the bigger thing here is what people started pointing out is that like Polymarket is ultimately deciding what constitutes an invasion or not. And that expands to everything else, right? Like if they're doing it for this, then they are also making other decisions on how they make payouts for other things that have been happening, right? I saw a case recently about a somebody had made a bet on like a game where the score was wrong on the television, and what he had bet was right, but they said that he was wrong because the television had showed that he was wrong, and he like tried to provide evidence, and they just like didn't want to pay out because it was a quite a big sum, right? And I think it's this like blurring of the lines of like what is truth and what is not, and then realizing that ultimately companies are getting to decide this, right? Same as Twitter. Twitter is deciding what is consent or not, and like what is too far and what is not, right? They took down a lot more of the child pornography ones than they did just the women ones, right? So clearly they've decided that the child pornography is obviously wrong, but the ones with just like, women are not as bad, right? And so like I think that's a bigger thing that also, us as marketers can be having those conversations about like, what can companies be deciding, right? Because it's not just we're talking about these two examples because it's like it's easy to rag on Polymarket because, of gambling, and Twitter because of Elon and, everything going on there. But there's a lot of companies that also make decisions about what affects them and what doesn't, and those are things that like we also can like talk about and make our own decisions about. So yeah, did you hear about this Polymarket story, Christina?
I did, and I am fascinated by it because I agree with what you talked about, but I think there's also other layers to it as well. I think there's the one of, especially with Polymarket and betting, it just makes me think, because I'm watching Fallout right now, and I've like my husband played the video game, so I know that world quite well.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking about Mr. House, and like the house always wins. And so it's very interesting that like, yes, we've normalized betting and we've brought it into the digital space, but the house still wins. They're still going to decide, and just like an insurance company, they don't want to pay you.
Yeah.
They're going to find whatever steps they can to make sure they don't pay you. I think the other thing too is that I think that the normalization of betting and making it possible to bet on absolutely everything, I don't think that that's by accident. I think it desensitizes us. There's going to be people who are more upset about Venezuela based off of whether or not they made money on the bet versus what actually happened. And I'm not going to try to get into like a left or right kind of space here. But I think that is important to note, is that there are people who have a more visceral reaction based on how they personally benefited from it or not, versus everything good, bad, and ugly that's associated with like what actually happened. And so I think that it's very interesting when we look at like us as a society and from like a sociological perspective, what are we really doing when we have decided I'm going to put my money into this and I'm going to bet on absolutely everything, and that's going to be the closest thing that I have to control? And then also talking about how you said they did get rid of the minors, the pictures on Grok that were associated with that, but not necessarily the women. I think that's just a further indictment of being a woman on the internet. I saw some people saying, well, you shouldn't be putting selfies on the internet. And someone said like, that's incredibly similar to you shouldn't have worn a skirt. You asked for it. And so I think the fact that those were not all removed, like all in tandem were not being removed, I think further showcases that we have normalized the sexual harassment of women.
Yeah.
Online especially. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think we have absolutely normalized that. And the fact that you have to have governments come in, you have to have like consumer groups coming in to demand change for real things to actually happen, I think speaks volumes. I think there's a lot of edgelords that want to rage bait and want to do things, but I also think that they will only make change once the bigger adult in the room shows up and basically puts them in timeout. Like, the
Yeah.
average consumer does not have the power of the British government to come in and
Mhm.
say, "What are you doing to actually fix this problem?" There's like, if you search on Twitter, you can find tons of women who've been complaining about this and were completely
Mhm.
ignored, or it got worse because they said something about it. People
Yeah.
were looking for new pictures of them to be able to utilize for this, and so I think it does say something that we've desensitized ourselves as a society to be able to be like, "Oh, this is it's just what you do. It's just rage
Yeah.
bait.
Mhm.
It's just edgelord behavior," instead of these are real humans that are being harassed, this is being done to them without their consent, and we need to have like those tough conversations about that. We really
Yeah.
do.
Well, one thing I've seen is that, oh, you shouldn't care because it's not real. It's AI. It's an AI photo. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not really you, you know? And it's like, well, but it looks like me. It has my face on it. And
Yeah.
even though I can recognize here within, or like I, and then we can recognize that here in this photo, it's
Yeah.
not real. It's AI. What if that, photo gets taken offline and then,
Uh-huh.
people assume that it is real?
Yeah.
You know, there's like all these like further consequences that it seems people either want to be completely obtuse to or just aren't thinking that far ahead.
I
It could
think
be
it's
both.
I really think it's a lack of empathy. I think we as humans see each other as content instead of other humans.
Hmm.
And so unless it affects us personally or if it's someone that we care about,
Hmm.
we just don't care. I think we have created a culture where we treat each other like NPCs. And so it's
Hmm.
like that's not real. You're not a real person. You're just someone
Hmm.
on the internet. You're probably a bot
Hmm.
instead of having the empathy to see that other person on the other side. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. This also reminds me of you were talking about earlier, just the proliferation of gambling and
Mhm.
how that's gone on to affect actual like athletes that are playing the
Yeah.
sports because
Yeah.
you have their fans running, going up to them and yelling at them that they lost money
Yep.
because they bet on them to, do something or to win and then they didn't.
Mhm.
And, you have athletes coming out and saying like gambling needs to be like go away
Mhm.
forever because like it's
Yeah.
completely changed the game. It's completely changed like the concept, right?
Yep.
Of like, people participating in the, activity as just like for fun and now
Yeah.
putting money behind it. And
Yeah.
because people are losing lots and lots of money,
Yeah.
it's suddenly become where like, well, who do you blame? Well, I'm not going to blame myself for being an idiot and gambling. I have to put it
Yeah.
outward of like, he should have won that game. He should
Yeah.
have like shot that goal.
Yeah.
Um, and like, it's also really easy to dehumanize sports star because they're making money. They're, like
Yeah.
who cares? They live in their like fancy houses and like their private like neighborhoods or whatever. But it's like it starts there and it kind of comes down. And now we're seeing people starting to gamble on other things. I saw recently that you're going to be allowed to gamble on whether we're going to have a recession or like a housing recession. And it's like,
I
well,
would argue the betting in general is proof. Like, it's very
right.
much a recession indicator.
Right. But then it's like, now some people are actively wanting things to get so bad,
Yeah.
housing wise, because they want to make money. They want, global events to happen because they
It's
want to
yeah.
make money. Right.
Well, it's not even that too. It's obviously the money, but so much of gambling is dopamine farming. It's not just like I lost money, I can stop doing this, or I can make money so I can stop doing this. Like, it's addictive for a reason. We are conditioning ourselves for the worst possible behavior. And I keep
Hmm.
seeing it, like not just with
Yeah.
gambling, but just social media in general is we have incentivized bad behavior
Hmm.
to the point where we've conditioned people for like, you want to go viral? You want everyone to know who you are?
Hmm.
Do something scandalous, say something
Hmm.
horrible, and then we're shocked when there's bad actors. Like, it's very much cause and effect. Could not be more clear cause and
Hmm.
effect.
Yeah. And I think this also goes back to what we as marketers can be doing, right? If we
Mhm.
are actively participating in that, if we
Yes.
are, being the Wendy's and the Duolingos and like the Clulies and all these like rage baiters who are like using rage bait as a strategy to attract more attention to
Mhm.
our product and
Yep.
to our service, you're participating in that,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. You're a
And
part of the problem.
yeah. And those are decisions that you do have control over, you
Mhm.
know? And actually we're starting to see, right, where it's not working as much anymore. I would just bring the examples of Cooley and Friend AI, right? Where it's like now they've rage baited so hard that people actively hate them and
Mhm.
want them to fail, right?
Yeah.
So now you have people that like will provoke and like rage bait that side, right? Against Cluely and like Friend. So it's like, where does it end? You know, as a marketer, it's like, do you want to get to that point where it's like people hate you and your company? It's like you're opting in for like a quick moment, flash in the pan. Um, and then the repercussion on the backside is that people hate you, and then you have to try to dig yourself out of that hole and try to get, you know, customers and consumers to come, you know, buy your product. And unless your, you know, product is so good, like it's going to be really hard for you to like, you know, come out of that. And we're seeing that with like Cluely, where it's like now they've switched over to like being a note taker or whatever.
Mhm.
But nobody wants to use them. And more importantly, nobody trusts them
Yep.
to like, you know, be a note taker because of like everything that goes behind that, right? It's just like, no, I'm not going to trust a company that its like first mantra was like cheat on everything, right?
Yep.
Um, and then with like Friend AI, it's like, well, you know, you're doing all this like rage baity stuff, but you're not actually fixing the product. So
Mhm.
now it's like they've gotten enemies.
Yeah.
You really should be moving away from that and not be using it as a strategy anymore.
100%. If you believe in the power of branding,
Hmm.
then that is not a sustainable long-term play.
Yeah.
It absolutely isn't. And pivoting is gonna be significantly harder because
Hmm.
it's gonna look reactionary. It's gonna look like you're trying to apologize without apologizing. And so
Exactly.
it's definitely gonna be a problem. And a lot of these AI companies are gonna struggle too because
Hmm.
like it's very easy to replicate AI capabilities now because everyone's plugged into the same LLMs. And so it's definitely very interesting to see how this is going to play out because if they have a competitor in the space, which obviously they already do, there's already positive sentiment.
Hmm.
Like they created their own red ocean
Hmm.
for attention and it's wild.
Yeah. Well, this kind of pivots over us perfectly to the topic I wanted to bring up, which was Chevrolet's Memory Lane holiday ad that went viral on Twitter. And it basically was this holiday ad that really, you know, turned up the nostalgia. It follows an empty nester couple that's driving their Suburban to a house. And then you start seeing the flashbacks showing like 30 years of like the family memories with the car, right? And you have like the babies and then bringing them home and then the babies, you know, growing up and having like different life stages, and you see how the car kind of like fits into like their entire life. And it like was so nostalgic and like just it made me cry. You know, I
Mhm.
was like, oh my god, like it just made me recognize like I'm in that moment now with like my two kids,
Yep.
and we're having like those memories, and I thought it was like such a beautiful like commercial, and I haven't really
Mhm.
seen something like this in a really long time, where it's like
Yeah.
dialing up the nostalgia and the family, and like really putting the holiday spirit into the holiday. And I thought it contrasted to the last ad that we talked about here with Haley Allen, who you also know as well,
Yep. She's
about
awesome.
yeah, about the McDonald's commercial, where it was kind of like made it out to seem as if the holiday was like the worst thing ever. And at the time, Haley and I were just saying that it was like the idea was just so poor. Like, who wants to think about like the holiday season being shitty, you know?
Yeah.
And then here you have this like ad where it's like it's about babies and family and the holidays, and it was just so emotional. Did
Yeah.
you see the commercial?
I did, and I love the nostalgia of it. I think though that's really interesting, especially with everything we've talked about, is the thing that got you was not only the nostalgia but the empathy of it. It's empathy
Hmm.
marketing in general. Is the
Hmm.
people who are going to be most touched by that are the people who can empathize with it. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but like the holidays did not feel like the holidays to me. So having
Hmm.
content that kind of infused it back into my life, I think is just a really lovely way because during the holidays, you want it to be cozy, you want it to feel
Hmm.
festive, you want it to be lighthearted and joyous and things like that. And so I think for companies that are able to infuse that back into their audience's lives, it's going to naturally create some positive sentiment, because the next time you probably see a Chevrolet, you're going to think about that commercial, and then you just
Mhm.
automatically have positive sentiment around the brand. I think we've seen a lot
Definitely
of
agree.
lack of empathy, lack of emotional intelligence, hyper automation and efficiency. I think we're going to see a massive pendulum swing in the opposite
Mhm.
direction. And we're going to see a focus on empathy and emotional marketing, emotional intelligence, analog. The one thing I'm really excited about for the Super Bowl commercials is I want to see
Yeah.
like
Mm.
classic.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Budweiser, like I want to see as many Clydesdales as you can afford.
Right.
Bring them
That's how I was gonna
all.
bring that up,
Bring
where
them
it's like,
all. I
you
want them
know,
all. Like
those ones
I
stand out as being
y-
also emotional, right? Or it's like you have the
yes.
horse one coming back to like
Yeah.
their original owner. Like,
Yeah, like,
you know.
I want every single Budweiser Clydesdale. Like, I
Mhm.
want them all. I just really feel good, nostalgic.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like bringing the humanity and like the humanness,
Oh,
back to
yeah.
things. We've
Yeah.
talked about it more in the context of like AI versus like human. But I think the bigger thing here is like humans feel, we can feel
Yeah.
emotions and
Mhm.
we can cry, right? And like
Yeah.
AI hasn't gotten to that point where it can make us, feel, right? Like
Mhm.
we've had, I mean, the Coca-Cola commercial and the McDonald's commercials, like
Yeah.
both of them like didn't have that nostalgia play that previous ads that they have created have
Yeah.
had. And I think that's another layer here too, where it's like, how do we get back to that?
Yeah.
The other thing I want to call out here is that while, you saw the car, being involved in like the whole thing, it wasn't really like even the way that they do like product placement in like movies, right?
Yeah.
It was just kind of there. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, calling it out. Same as like the Budweiser, right? It's like more about the horses. You barely even see that it's about like beer.
Yeah.
Um the other one I was remembering was remember the Star Wars kid with the Volkswagen, right?
Oh,
It's
I
like,
love, like,
yeah,
classic Volkswagen ads
exactly.
are,
Like,
love, love, love,
bring
love.
kids back,
Yeah.
Like, help the fertility crisis with cute kids.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a couple of the stats here that I want to call out is that, as of now, it's had 778,000 views on YouTube. New York Post, TikTok creators, and social media have all covered giving organic reactions to the ad itself. I saw a tweet, the one actually that made me, watch the ad said, I made it through Christmas Day without tears until I watched this. So of
Yeah.
course I'm like prime myself. Okay, we're gonna cry.
Yeah. We're ready.
um, and then this is also something that Chevy has been doing. So in 2023, they had an Alzheimer's ad. In 2021, they had an ad labeled Holiday Ride where the daughter restores her late mom's Impala. So that's
Uh-huh.
really like, having that family connection there.
Yeah.
And the CMO, Steve Mahoros, said that identity politics play about zero role in what we do, declining the political framing some try to attach. Brands are understanding that. So we have to move away from all the politicalness. And it's like, how do we
Yep.
bring back human feeling? How do we bring back
Yep.
that human emotion? And like what's tied to like how you feel about a brand, right?
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
like what you said, Christina, like I now see Chevy in a better light.
But it does. It absolutely like those, and I think that when you think about like the Volkswagen commercials, I think it's probably the best way to
Hmm.
describe it is that there is proof that marketing and advertising works,
Yeah.
and it is almost always tied to emotion. It's just
Hmm.
we've chosen anger to be the emotion that we want to
Yes.
garner.
Mm.
I think that it's time for us to go back to like not every emotion we charge for has to be negative
Yeah.
or mean-spirited or cruel or
Yeah.
angry. I think we can absolutely tap into the vast array of
Hmm. Hmm.
emotions that humanity has, including the cozy ones,
Yeah.
including the nice ones.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually been thinking about this. I want to write a piece on this, but I'll walk you through it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this more in terms of Monsters Inc., right? Where this whole
Yes.
idea that you know, you're scaring kids
Yep. And feed
in
off the
order to
scares.
get, yeah, in order to, build the energy. And at the end, you figure out that you by making them laugh, you get more energy, right?
Yep.
And it like not only solves a problem, but it's like shows that like you can be limiting yourself by only looking at the negative and
Yep.
without looking at like what other emotions can we garner that
Yep.
like will make people like your brand, right?
And that energy is more sustainable.
Exactly,
The
right?
positive energy is actually more
Exactly.
sustainable. Yeah.
And then now we have like nostalgia and like this emotion, right? It's like I'm
Mhm.
sure every parent that saw this ad was like, Oh my God. Yes. Like I feel it. I get it. I love it. Maybe not Justin Murphy because he doesn't like his kids, but the rest of us certainly did. Um, but that's like, something there where it's just like, I really want like brands to start thinking about making people laugh and making people cry in a good way,
Yeah.
not like because they're angry or they feel sad. I mean, you can feel sad, but like happy crying, right? Like we know the difference.
Yeah.
And that's really something that I want to like, actively participate in, like with the brands that I work with, but then in the brands that I engage with, like
Yeah.
that's what I want to be, looking out for. I do not need brands to be pissing me off even more when other things in the world that are happening are pissing me off enough, you know?
Exactly. We don't need any more troll brands.
Yeah,
We don't. We're
exactly.
we're we're good. We have plenty. We're fine.
Awesome. Okay. So a couple of things here to think about as a marketer is this has become kind of an annual tradition for Chevy. And now I'm going to be looking forward to this every year to see what they do. Similar to the Super Bowl commercial with like Budweiser. I'm always on the lookout for the Clydesdale horses. Make sure that like there are these traditions that you're creating that are like happy and positive so that people start associating that with you. This works particularly well for car companies, which we know are long-term purchases, right? Like this
Yep.
isn't a thing that you just decide, oh, today I'm going to go buy a car. It's no, like I see a brand, it makes me feel good. Next time that I need a car in like, 5 years, maybe I'll consider a Chevrolet. And I think start thinking about like those positive feelings that you can be bringing out in people, make people laugh, make people smile, make people cry in a joyful way, and not just trying to, piss people off or, make them scared. Because as we learned years ago when Monster Inc. came out, the positive, happy stuff will bring far more energy than any of the negative stuff ever did.
So speaking of nostalgia, we have
Mhm.
the end of Stranger Things over New Year's Eve, and I, as many as well as millions of other people, watched the finale and was prepared to see how the story was going to end. The problem is that the story hasn't really ended, especially for fans. So if you are on social at all, especially if you're on TikTok, you will know that this is a very hungry, knowledgeable fan base that loves conspiracy theories, that loves trying to figure out where it's going to go next. And the Duffer Brothers, the creators of the show, have been very clear with audiences that they need to pay attention. They have tons of 1980s homages, but they've also dropped a lot of Easter eggs. And so when the finale hit, there were I don't want to say that everyone was miserable and everyone hated it. I didn't like it, but there were definitely people who liked it. And so for me, the first hour, the second hour was very the big chill. And yes, both are very 80s, but there was a lot of loose ends. And so there is a contingency of the internet that is very, very diehard fans of Stranger Things that has composed a conspiracy theory again over what is actually happening. And they are theorizing that there is another finale of a that we got a fake finale and there's a new finale. There is a website even, it's called Vecna Lives. If you type in www.november61987.com, it has a countdown for Wednesday night to basically like, this is actually going to be the real finale. And I think that this is indicative of a few things. I think it shows the power of fandom and what can happen when creators really kind of foster a co-creation / parasocial relationship with their fans. I think it also goes to show that there are really, really smart, like I've basically seen every kind of fan theory I could think of. I loved so many of them. I wish they came true. Like, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're getting a new finale, but like, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want one. Like, I would absolutely love for them to fix the mess that they left. I think it's really interesting to see this play out because I think that it shows kind of the good and the bad of fandom. And so they assume that if you love us, like you're going to continue to love us, even if we drop the ball. And that's just not how humans work.
Hello,
And so,
Game of Thrones.
Exactly.
Nobody fucking talks about it anymore because of how they ended.
So I think that it's really helpful to, even if you're a marketer and you're like, oh, I never watched a single episode of this show, I'm going to be like, what did Stranger Things teach me about B2B marketing? It really is, like, it honestly is a case study in you get what you wanted. You have this cult following. You have these diehard fans that are like creating lore or finding Easter eggs that maybe you didn't intend, that are crafting. Like AO3 right now is popping with all of these fan fictions of people who are literally rewriting season 5 as the way that they wish it had happened, whether the Duffer Brothers and Netflix want it to happen or not. And so for brands who are like, I want millions of people to love us and I want millions of people to care and I want them to be obsessed with us. there's another side of that coin. And so I think it's really helpful to, whether you believe the conspiracy theories or not, what is true is that there is a deeply passionate audience that is not willing to let it go, is not willing to say goodbye, but also wants to have a deeper part of the lore itself. And in creating their own theories, they are cementing their legacy as a part of this show, because that's the kind of relationship that they want with the show. As marketers, we should absolutely be paying attention. I think the best marketers are observers of humanity. They see how people are reacting to things and what they do, how they're more likely to behave like that in the future.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of also marketing lessons in this. So one of the big ones for me is how the Duffer Brothers are out there talking about what's
I
essentially
don't know
a
what their
failure,
PR team
right?
is doing. I don't,
Um,
but that makes me wonder if it's true, because like any
yeah.
good PR person would have yanked them and be like, you don't get to answer any more questions. We're done
Yeah.
here. Like, interview's over. Yeah.
Yeah. They're basically saying like, we've left a lot of stuff off screen, you know, like a lot of like big plot lines, you know, that a lot of,
Massive plot lines.
yeah,
Yeah.
that people care about. And they're just saying, oh, well, you know, you get to decide that for yourself. Which I think is like really dumb because
It is.
what
Yeah.
people kind of keep coming back to is like, it took you how fucking long to make this show. You've talked about it forever, saying that each time that you're making it, you're putting it all in. It costs $400 million to make. And then you don't close out plot lines. You don't close stories. You don't like let us know what happened to these like characters that we've known. How dare you?
Yeah.
Like, do
Yeah.
you not care about your characters as much as we care about them?
Yep.
And I think that's where I've seen so much anger, where it's like people just feel so let down that it's like we've grown
Mhm.
to like love these, characters so much from like season one. Like I saw some people saying like, oh, this is the same storyline that Elle was supposed to have when we thought about her in season one. But it's
Yeah.
like, well, but what happened to all the character growth she's had since then? Like, how do you not then adjust what was supposed to happen to her based on
Yeah.
where she is now? And another one that I've been hearing is because, people are like, how could this fail so bad? And then,
Yep.
people are like, well, the wife left and she was the
Yep.
main writer, right?
Yep.
And I'm just like, oh, you're ceding like control of the narrative. And now
Yep.
people are like trying to explain away everything. And that's taking everything away from like what the Duffer Brothers, did. Like
Yeah.
whether or not like the wife is the one that we can like, say created the idea and the plot lines and all that, the story and everything. Now it's kind of just being removed from them.
Yep.
And we saw similarly with Game of Thrones. Nobody talks about that show in the context of like the greats anymore,
Yep.
right? And like that happens because fans are upset. And we also see we've talked about that before with like Star Wars, right? Where it's like you can let it go too far, where you take them too much into account, and
Yep.
then you get rid of the integrity of the story and like what you were thinking of doing because you listen to them too much. You're trying to like walk a line here, but I feel like people like artists, creatives, us as marketers have to like kind of hold fast to like the way
Mhm.
that we're thinking we're going to put things out there. Otherwise it could get all mixed up in like
Yep.
um and like we lose the messaging and the positioning and everything.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to highlight is that so many people came out to watch the show at movie theaters.
Yep.
And I really want to highlight that because Netflix just brought Warner Brothers and they've started talking about doing a 17-day theatrical window for the movies that come out. And we need to show these as like examples of like people do want a theatrical experience.
Yes.
They went to see a show, a Netflix show
Yeah.
at the movie theaters because they're so like involved in, the characters and everything. And I think there's something there, not just that the idea that like people want to go to the movie theaters. Yes, there's that, but there's more that like movie theaters and like the movie companies have to do to get them to actually go and want to
Yes.
go, right? We just saw the masterclass of like Marty Supreme and like,
Yep.
Timothy Chalamet, everything he had to do to get people to go to the movie theater.
Yep.
And what's happening? It's going to be like the first A24 film that's reaching 100 million domestically. That never
Mhm.
happens with an indie film. And like, he had to do this like months long like marketing campaign. Like he did the merch drops. He like showed up at like in Brazil on like podcasts. He did like all these things to get people to care because he
Mhm.
knew that it was like it wasn't like related to any IP, right? It's not like Superman. It's not like, what's coming out, Star Wars next year, Dune, like all these
Mhm.
films like already have an established fan base, right?
Mhm.
So he knew, well, I have a fan base. How do I get them to actually come out and like
Mhm.
watch a movie on Christmas Day,
Yep.
when I'm competing against, Avatar, which
Mhm.
also is showing that people want to go to the movie theaters
Yeah.
that cross what, 1 billion
Mhm.
worldwide. So there's like a lot of things at play here where it's like these are all marketing lessons of like, what Christina was saying, that like people want that community and people
Mhm.
want to experience things with other people, right? Like people went to the
Yeah.
movie theater because they wanted to be there with other fans that they know, you know, love the show as much as they do.
Well, I'm
Which
going
also
I'm like in like a week. I'm watching
oh,
Lord of the Rings. They're
oh, are you going? Oh,
they're re-releasing the trilogy and I'm like,
yes, yes,
I will be there
yes.
with bells on. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And people want those experiences, right?
Yeah.
Like these are the things I think that like companies need to start looking for in 2026 for their marketing strategies. How do we get people to participate? How do we get people to meet other people? How do we
Mhm.
get them to make friends and not have it be like weird, Like we
Yeah.
talked about last year, the K-pop Demon Hunters sing-along like theatrical experiences.
Yeah. But it
Um
has to feel special. Like, and
yeah.
I think that also goes against the AI is we have
Yeah.
so much content. It really comes down to, does this feel special? Is
Mhm.
this going to feel unique? Like Avatar in the theater versus Avatar at home, same movie, very different experience.
Oh yeah.
And so if you are a Timothy Chalamet fan or you're an A24 fan or you just like ping pong, I don't know. But if that means a lot to you, then that becomes an event. You want to be a
Right.
part of that spectacle.
Mm,
Audiences are showing that they're going to do that,
mhm.
but there has to be a reason. Like there
Yeah.
has to be a tangible experience because otherwise you're going to wait. Like
Mhm.
otherwise you're going to wait to stream. So like Dune, I'm going to be in the theater. That is something that deserves to be on the big screen.
Mhm.
There are certain movies that like you need to see it in IMAX or you need
Yeah.
to see it on like the biggest screen you can get to if you're not near IMAX, but it
Mhm.
needs like the largeness of it all is a part of the experience.
Mhm.
And so like when Frankenstein came out,
Mhm.
I knew I wasn't gonna have a lot of time and I was like, I don't care who's coming with me, I'm going. I'll go by
Mhm.
myself. I don't care.
Yeah.
But like if Guillermo calls, I show up.
Yeah.
Just tell me where I need to be. And it was beautiful. And I'm so glad I saw it at the theater. But it's those things like
And hooray, Jacob Elordi for just winning
yeah, he
the
deserved it. He really deserved it. I was so
and
happy he
Timothy.
got it. Yep. I was so glad he got it because his creature portrayal is so
Mhm.
well done, very nuanced, like
Mhm.
really beautifully done. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. So that's, shout out to me because I just wrote this piece, but I wrote about what tech companies can be stealing from like movie promotional tours, which is that it's a months long campaign. It's no
Yeah.
longer you just do a launch day and then boom, you're out. No, now it's like you got to be doing, you got to be dropping breadcrumbs of like things
Yeah.
that people follow, like, those Easter eggs that they can like be involved with and like
Mhm.
look for those clues and then look for the next one, right? Like
Yeah.
I gave the example of like how movies kind of come out.
Mhm.
They do like a teaser of like the trailer that's coming out. Then they do the trailer and then they start dropping the celebrities to like go to like doing these interviews.
Yeah.
And then you have them like they'll do the movie premiere. The movie premieres are like in major cities, right? It's not just one city. They go to like
Yeah.
New York, they go to London, they go to LA. The actresses all dressed up in method dressing, right?
Yeah.
Like what Zendaya and like La Roche kind of like popularized. These are all things that are expected of them, and tech companies need to step that up. They need to like start doing more. Like it's not just, we put out a launch video and that's it.
Yeah.
No, it's not just like we have launch day and then we talk to the press, we go on TBPN for one day and then that's it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
like involve the founders, like get them to like, talk to other, podcasts and like press outlets, like get them to come out and like, be on Twitter and social media, like trying to like talk to people. Like, how are you engaging with your community? How are you getting people to come out? It's no longer just going to be we put this out and we expect you to come. No, you got to work harder.
Yeah.
Like especially there's so much coming out. There's so much noise. You're competing against the news and politics. Now you got to, you know, you got to do something more. So I've
100%.
written that on Substack. I will link to it in the show notes, but definitely give it a read. Let us know what you think. Um, Another one that I want to talk about that's starting to do these breadcrumbs is Cadillac, because they're debuting two new drivers, and they're debuting in F1 for the first time. They're doing, long campaigns of like announcing Bottas and Perez as like their drivers. They just announced Zhou Guanzhou as like one of their reserve drivers. But the one that I want to highlight is that they're going to do the Hot Ones, the show on YouTube. And they're going to be competing against each other, which I thought was like a brilliant way to kind of start it off of like,
Yeah.
hey, you were already going to start competing against each other,
Yeah.
right?
Versus.
He's my teammate. On and off, the track, and I thought it was also a great way for like Cadillac to introduce themselves to that younger audience that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily pay attention to F1 yet.
Right.
They know that they have to go to like these new like outlets like podcasts, YouTube channels, in order to get in front of the people that don't pay attention to the news or that aren't paying attention on social media. It's now you have to go to these outlets, right? We saw that with Leonardo DiCaprio going on like the New Heights podcast with, Jason and Travis Kelsey in order to promote his movie, One Battle After Another. He'd never done that before, and so it's just showing that all these like new outlets are kind of getting you more attention than just going on, the press circuit. Obviously, they've already announced through all like the regular like F1 and like motorsport magazines, and now it's like, okay, well, what else can we do? And I think it was a really interesting thing to like also see that like Cadillac as like it's not the first American company. Haas is technically an American company, but it's not really putting itself out there as like gung-ho America, rah rah rah. I think it's like brilliant that like Cadillac is going the American route. Let's go talk to like American influencers in order to get our drivers in front of them. Maybe some of you will remember Lewis Hamilton was on Hot Ones last year. I think it also shows that Cadillac and then Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez are really putting more of their personality on display, a
Okay.
lot more than they'd ever been able to do. Mercedes for Bottas and then Red Bull for Perez. So it's like signifying like a new age for them. But then also like it's showing, I think, that Cadillac is giving them the chance to like highlight their own personalities and be like brand ambassadors to Cadillac. So I thought it was like really fun. Did you see this? I know you might have seen like Hot Ones, but maybe not the F1
I
ones.
haven't seen that, but I do believe there's obviously such a personalized identity culture around F1. Everyone has like their favorite driver, and so
Mhm.
I think it's very smart to use this. It's a great humanizing technique. And I love those kind of videos. I mean, they're
Mhm.
kind of all born from the BuzzFeed of it all, but
Mhm.
I absolutely love Hot Ones. So I think it's incredibly smart.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a BuzzFeed show, right? Hot Ones.
I
I
don't I don't
think
know if it was a hot. It used to be with Complex.
sorry, I looked it up, and BuzzFeed did own Hot Ones, and they sold them
Okay.
last year for 82.5 million. So
Jeez. But it makes
um
sense. It feels kind of BuzzFeedy. I know
yeah,
I
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember seeing BuzzFeed on it. I just remember it saying like Complex, but that was probably their big sponsor.
Yeah, it might have
Um,
been.
but it does feel very much like the kind of content that BuzzFeed kind of started on the internet.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Anyway, so a couple stats here to share. So Hot One averages 5 to 10 million views per episode on YouTube, which is wild to think about. And
The
then
Conan O'Brien one, if you're listening and you've not seen the Conan O'Brien Hot Ones,
I saw some of the videos on,
stop what you're doing.
yeah.
It is perfect. It is the funniest thing on the internet. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it absolutely, like, Conan O'Brien, Hot Ones, like, do yourself a favor. It's absolutely
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. I saw some snippets on Twitter, but I haven't watched the whole thing. I should go do that.
You will be howling. You'll be crying. You'll be laughing so hard. It's so funny. So funny.
Yeah, I mean, Conan's on a whole other level. Side thing here, because it was such a good story. But the story about him talking to Will Arnett about his parents dying, and
Yeah.
like, you know, the whole thing that we've been talking about here is just like that infusing humor into how you talk to other people can get you so much more than
Yeah.
like trying to off, like not talk about it or to ignore that, like, your friend just went through this like huge thing. Anyway, if you haven't seen the video, look it up. Conan O'Brien talking to Will Arnett about Jason Bateman killing his parents.
Yes.
um Anyway, so back to the stats. So Cadillac is really trying to, grow their US F1 viewership. This is coming after the rise in popularity of Drive to Survive. And they're, really trying to grow the American fan base. And it's not just Cadillac. We're seeing that F1 in general is trying to do that. They, sold to Apple last year. So we're going to, have them there. We're going to see what they're going to start doing there in order to kind of start appealing a little bit more to American viewers. Okay, so a couple of insights here is like, go to where your audience is, right? The F1 knows that the American viewership is not quite there yet. Where do Americans go? Where do young people go? Let's go to YouTube. Personality beats credentials. They're using their drivers to kind of like use their personalities to shine back to like, Cadillac. I don't know if you saw it, but Bottas announced, it was like a Happy New Year. He was wearing a like American Speedo with like the bald eagle right on his crotch. And so it's like really showing that he's bringing his personality and he's allowed to do, right? Like they're allowing him to do this at Cadillac, where he never would have been able to do that at Mercedes, right? So it's like really showing kind of that difference of like who he is, and like, he's basically allowed to be free. He's also really taking on a lot of like that gung-ho America like spirit, which I think actually really works for him and for the Cadillac brand. And then the last one is what I've kind of recommended here before, where we're gonna start seeing people go to like podcasts and like these influencers a lot more than just traditional press. We've seen the rise of TBPN in the tech world because people just want to have fun. I think that like these influencer formats are things that we're going to be seeing, people participate in more, like we saw with Leonardo DiCaprio and like the New Heights podcast. We'll probably start seeing a lot more celebrities on that podcast, especially since Travis Kelce announced that he's retiring, right? Okay, takeaways.
I think for me, it really comes down to, I want to see more emotional intelligence and empathy in 2026. I want to see from brands, from tech leaders, from just everyday citizens like myself. I think that there is a huge opportunity for us to go back to what marketing is really good at it. I wrote a piece at the end of last year, basically an open letter to end Machiavellian marketing, because I do think that last year was very much the year of rage baiting and doing literally anything for attention. My big takeaway is I hope that we are all sick of it and we go back to showing what great creativity, marketing, and advertising really looks like. And like I said, I really want to see some Clydesdales at the Super Bowl. I really do. That would, like, if I can have one wish, I want Clydesdales.
Yes, definitely agree. I think people just want more. I don't even say like happiness. It's not that, but just optimism.
Yeah.
Things feel kind of really bad right now for everybody, and I don't think like brands need to be piling on to that. I think that also like hits on the AI conversation of like, don't, unless you have to, come up with new creative ways to like show off your brand, the product and service that like you have, and like really focus on that, like, more positive side of like, there's so many like happy positive emotions that you can be using that like you could lean into. And I think nostalgia is going to be a big thing because people want to kind of think back on like happier times. And then also like the medium matters. Like you can go to like smaller niche like markets where like podcasts and Substacks to like talk to those audiences instead of trying to go the mainstream route. And then people want to experience things. And I think that that's going to be like a big thing of like, how do you get your customers to participate with your brand and with other people that enjoy your brand as well? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for joining me today. How can people find you?
I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and Substack now, so feel free to go over there. If you want more of my nerd takes, you can find me on Threads at that Christina G.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Sonia Bishes everywhere, and the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube, and then Meme Team Podcast on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you. Bye.